Good morning. Welcome to episode 77 of the Driller Newscast, a weekly update on the news and stories impacting the drilling and water industry. I'm your host, Brock Yordy, and this week we're going to jump right past the news to discuss our feature story, an interview with Tanner Kuhl from the U.S. ice drilling program and his experience of coring ice and rock in Greenland. But before we start this amazing discussion, let's talk some safety. For this week's safety topic, we're going to continue the National Suicide Prevention and Mental Health topics because September is Suicide Prevention and Mental Health Month. Suicide is a complex and distressing issue that touches all demographics in all industries. While suicide prevention awareness has grown, there is more we need to do to address this issue in the workplace. The workplace is a significant part of people's lives because of the time we spend there and often acts as a catalyst for stress, anxiety, and other mental health challenges. Employers should consider mental health as part of their safety and health management systems. My industry friend, Hugh Geigelkamp, stated in his interview from 1 year ago that 1/3 of a person's life is spent at work. It is estimated that is 90,000 hours. Go to the OSHA.gov website and download the 5 things you should know poster. And it starts with number 1, be aware. Everyone can help prevent suicide. Mental health and suicide can be difficult to talk about, especially with work colleagues, but your actions can make a difference. When you work closely with others, you may sense when something is wrong. They're part of our universe. We have to have their back. Number 2, pay attention. Know the warning signs of suicide. There is no single cause for suicide, but there are warning signs. Changes in behavior, mood, or even what they say may signal someone is at risk. Take these signs seriously. It could save a life. Number 3, reach out. Ask, are you okay? If you are concerned about a coworker, talk with them privately and listen without judgment. Encourage them to reach out to your employee assistant program. That's what we need, employee assistant programs with our HR team. Or if we're a small drilling company, just consider how important mental health is and how we're going to handle it by getting them to a mental health professional. 4, take action if someone is in crisis. Stay with them and get help. If you believe a coworker is at immediate risk of suicide, stay with them until you can get further help. Contact emergency services or the 988 number, the Suicide Crisis Lifeline. 5, we must learn more about suicide prevention. There are resources available. Call or text the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988. Visit the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. That's www.afsp.org to learn more about suicide risk factors, warning signs, and what you can do to help prevent suicides. We have to have each other's back. Having a stop work authority for somebody's mental health is just as important as having that stop work authority before we smash into a piece of equipment or that suspended load is not quite the way it should be. We got to pay attention, everybody. For our feature story this week, we're going to have an interview with Tanner Kuhl from the United States Ice Drilling Program. Tanner is a mechanical engineer and driller for the U.S. Ice Drilling Program. He comes from the Space and Science Engineering Center, University of Wisconsin-Madison. What is the United States Ice Drilling Program? It's very awesome. The Ice Drilling Program convenes a science advisory board for the purpose of forming and updating a long-range science plan that articulates the direction of the U.S. ice coring and drilling science and identifies the drills and drilling technologies required to enable that science. This is to discover the unknown, for us to understand those ice cores and how climate change is happening, how our glaciers are depleting. They core into rock that we haven't been able to access since 14,000 years ago. And let's face it, humanity at that time wasn't worried about what was there. And now we're using that information to better understand how our planet is actively working and where we'll go next. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Tanner. And we have Jeremy Verdusco, editor of The Driller, to kick off this talk.
All right, we are here today with Tanner Kuhl, and he is an engineer and a driller and has a pretty interesting story about an interesting project that we read about recently, and we were dying to have him on the show to talk about it. So first off, Tanner, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you, and what do you do?
So sure, yeah. So I'm a mechanical engineer employed by the U.S. Ice Drilling Program, which is a National Science Foundation funded group. We're at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And so I do mechanical engineering, project planning, and then I do the drilling during the field seasons for whatever science projects are funded, and we're asked to support the drilling aspect of it.
This is fascinating. And the Driller media platform, we talk about all kinds of great projects around the world. And most of the time when we say around the world, we're thinking Northern Canada or Latin America. We don't get onto projects that are like Greenland and things like this. So can you give us an overview of this Greenland project? What was the overall objective? Why were you there?
Sure. So this was a science project that had been in the making for years. A couple of scientists out of Columbia University and the University of Buffalo, they got a science proposal funded to collect bedrock samples from beneath the Greenland ice sheet. And they're doing that to determine when the last time that bedrock was exposed to sunlight, basically. So when's the last time the ice sheet wasn't there, essentially. So that was the gist of the project. So we actually took two separate drills and drilled two sites, a deeper site and a shallow site, and retrieved those subglacial samples that they wanted to do their various tests on.
Mm-hmm. So kind of two words come to mind when I think about this project: frozen and hellscape. It just sounds horrid up there. So you had two different drills. Tell me a little bit about the preparation that goes into, what rigs are we bringing, what tooling, solids control for that kind of extreme weather?
Sure. So we purpose built this rig, working with a company in Canada. We put out a bid for rig makers based on our specifications for a drilling rig. In this case, a minerals exploration type rig that could operate in the conditions where we're used to operating, which is generally Greenland, Antarctica, high mountain glaciers around the world, various places. But so we worked with the rig maker. They came back with a specialized rig that then we took and continued to modify and added on various components necessary for drilling in ice as opposed to rock. But so we're a group of about 10 people, year-round staff to plan and support these projects. Generally, we'll have 5 or 6 projects in Antarctica in a season, in the austral summer season down there, and then usually at least 2 or 3 up in Greenland. And then sometimes we have a high mountain project sprinkled in there also. So yeah, the equipment's all fairly specialized. Everything has to be rated for the cold. It'd be similar, the specs are similar to what drillers use up in Northern Canada. In some cases, it's actually colder up there than when we're operating, because we only operate in the summer seasons in the various locations we go. So it's 24 hours of sunlight generally, and you're there during the best possible weather, which sometimes isn't very nice still. But temperature wise and conditions wise, some of the stuff the guys up in northern Canada do is pretty hardcore. But so yeah, a lot of the techniques and equipment that was been developed for that northern Canada, Alaska drilling, we borrowed some of that, and then combine that with the years of ice drilling experience that our group has. We're primarily ice core drillers. That's been our bread and butter over the years. So this project was a little bit different. In the last 10 years, we've started doing some of this subglacier rock drilling with these modified minerals exploration rigs. So still learning, but I've had a couple successful seasons with the ASIG rig, and then several successful seasons with our smaller rig that's similar, just quite a lot smaller.
I want to join up. This is great.
Yeah.
When it comes to, the remoteness, this extreme remoteness, especially working in a specific season, being able to mobilize in, demobilize, advanced prep, you said this is years in the making. And I think of the scientists right now that are working on trying to do ice drilling for Europa, in space, what NASA's hypothesizing to be able to do a meter or two, and the years of prep that go into that. And here we are, something that's tangible that we can get to. But when they approach you and ask you these questions, what comes to mind? You say years of experience of doing this, but what does the process look like?
So normally the scientists, once they're funded, they'll come to us and they'll tell us what they want, and we'll tell them whether we have that equipment or not. Generally we do. If it's a more common ice coring project, or if they want a borehole just to put instruments down in ice, all that stuff's been developed over the last 50 years or longer. The U.S. program goes back, I think, 70 years. So we generally have that stuff, but then there are certain projects, both ice coring and with rock drilling now, that the equipment doesn't exist, and so then our group will go work with the National Science Foundation, get funding in place, and we'll actually do a development project where we'll build the drill from scratch based on the scientific requirements. And that, depending on the complexity of the drill, usually takes 1 to 2 to 3 years. So we're a small group. We support a lot of projects. Most of our engineers spend 4 or 5 months a year in the field, so actually doing the projects. So we don't always have a huge group of people that are able to spend full time doing the engineering and the fabrication. So it can take it can take a significant amount of time.
So when you're so it's all remote and kind of I guess modular equipment, all heliportable, right?
Yeah. So the rig is based on what's the man portable style minerals exploration rigs. So it's that style. Everything is broken down into components that can be moved without heavy equipment. Mm-hmm. They can be loaded onto aircraft. Most of the time, we're not helicopter supported because we're too far away from the range of the helicopters isn't sufficient.
Okay.
So generally, we go in either with fixed wing support, ski equipped, small cargo aircraft. We work with the U.S. Air National Guard. They fly us around in their LC-130 aircraft, both in Greenland and Antarctica. Mm-hmm. And then we do over snow tractor traverses, where we actually drive to the location with various types of tracked machinery and sleds.
Okay.
That's actually the preferred way to do it, because then you do actually have some heavy equipment around to help you move stuff and clear snow and things like that.
Yeah. But so where do you tram in from? I mean, it seemed fairly remote from the story we read, but help illustrate it for us.
Sure. So this last project we did in Greenland, that was all aircraft supported.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So we flew from a U.S. Air Force base in Northwest Greenland to the field site at Prudhoe Dome with using what's an aircraft called a Basler, which is a modified DC-3 on skis.
Okay.
So, but in previous projects, the previous ASIG project down in Antarctica, that was a tractor traverse where we started from a more or less permanent U.S. base that's out on the ice sheet, assembled all the equipment there via the heavy lift LC-130 aircraft, and then traversed from there with tractors and equipment for about a week to get out to the actual site where we did the drilling.
Okay. So once you have it all there, walk us through, you have basically all these Legos to put together. Like, walk us through that process that
Sure.
gets you to the first day of drilling.
Sure. So the first step, we're almost always going into the middle of nowhere where there is no infrastructure. So the first thing we have to do is build a camp. So we'll set up a tent camp with a communal kitchen, eating tent, and then sleeping tent. So you get that set up, you get things safe. So in case you do get hit with a storm, you've got shelter. But then once that's established, it's basically you level a spot, we build a footing to spread the weight of the rig over the snow surface, because the snow surface can only handle about 2 psi pressure, or you get significant deformation. So we have to build a big rig pad essentially, and then we assemble the system, piece by piece. We drill inside a tent with the ASIG drill. So because the weather can be so bad, lots of blowing and falling snow, we try to get the tent up as soon as possible and do most of the assembly inside. With these man-portable rigs, there's a lot of assembly that has to be done.
Yeah.
A very large number of hydraulic hoses have to be connected and run between the rig modules, the engines, and the hydraulic module, the control module. So there's about 3 to 4 days if the weather's reasonable to get the rig system built and ready to drill. And then so the first step with these rigs is, in most locations, the upper layers of the ice sheet are porous. So they're essentially it's essentially snow that's gradually being compacted. So we have to actually drill through those upper porous layers. We drill with various ways of doing it. We've done it with augers. We've done it with ice coring drills. But basically, get through those porous layers down to ice that's impermeable to our drilling liquid, and then we case that upper hole, we call the pilot hole. We case that and seal off to that non-permeable ice with an inflatable packer. And so that gives us that fluid tight conduit all the way to the surface, so we can then drill inside that casing.
Okay. Your competent ice, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And so that can be anywhere from a few meters down to this last season, we were nearly 80 meters down before we got to ice that was fluid, liquid tight. So, but then at that point, we switched to, your traditional minerals exploration type drilling. We can run in both reverse or normal circulation with this drill. We use a thin kerf European standard drill rod that's very lightweight. It's similar to thin kerf B size, but it's not exactly. And so we use a variety of different drill bits, specially designed. We've got various kinds that we use, but we drill what we call the access hole, starting from the bottom of the pilot hole. And in that configuration, we're not taking any core. So it's full face drill bit, pumping our drilling fluid, again, in either reverse or normal circulation to clear the head, bring the chips to the surface, where we run them through a modified shaker table system to do the initial cutting separation. And then we take the ice cuttings that come off the shaker table, and we actually put them through a melter system that uses residual heat off of one of the rig engines. And because the drilling liquid and water separate readily, we can actually melt them and get back another 15-20% drilling fluid that was in the chips. So I don't think I mentioned we use a non-freezing light hydrocarbon drilling fluid. It's not unlike drilling with diesel fuel, but it's a little bit nicer to work around. It's had most of the volatiles taken out of it. It's even less flammable than diesel fuel. So it's pretty nice fluid to drill with, but obviously we can't use water because it would freeze.
So like the petrol-free type stuff that we see in the oil field these days?
Yeah,
like
it'd be pretty similar to some of the stuff that's used offshore, especially in the Gulf of Mexico. It's a fairly common petroleum-based drilling fluid.
My first 10 years after leaving my father's drill company, I was with Bayreuth Halliburton. So
Okay.
I got a whole gambit of, fluids training and solids control training.
Gotcha. So we don't add any additives. You can't really do like LCM in ice. Ice doesn't respond to that sort of stuff. So it's just a single component, clear liquid. But yeah, so we drill in that mode until we get to whatever layer the scientists are interested in core, which can be either in ice or it can be when we get to the subglacial environment. So we'll stop, pull the rod, put on a coring bit, and then we have a wireline core retrieval system that goes, that's goes with the drill rod, and so we can take ice core and then subglacial sediments and rock core in that manner.
I'm going to go off page on this question. We have a great question on safety we want to talk about, but okay, so if we're coring ice, and I know plenty of the drillers out there right now are thinking about this, most of the time when we're drilling, we're creating heat. We're rotating. We have, this going on. You have this fluid that you're using, but how do you keep an ice core intact?
So it's
any of that?
So we have to keep everything cold. So when you're ice drilling, heat's your enemy. Everything has to be kept below freezing at a minimum. So we go to great lengths to make sure that our drilling fluid is as cold as we can keep it. Now the formation you're drilling in is obviously very cold. Something like generally minus 20 degrees C. We've drilled in ice that was minus 55 degrees C. So it's cold. So that helps. Yeah. But you drill ice fundamentally different than you drill rock. So with rock, you put weight on bit, you basically crush the material and clear it. With ice, we drill with zero weight on bit. We use positive rake, hardened steel tools that are extremely sharp. Okay. So it's more like you shave the ice. Shaving, yeah. You basically hold back all of the weight of the drill string, and we create really nice ice shavings that are easy to transport, and we try not to create any liquid water at all in the hole because it will freeze right where you don't want it.
Now, is there anything that you have to do to disperse heat down hole, like, during the process? Forgive if it's an ignorant question, but like, as Brock pointed out, you're turning, you've got your liquid, it's, sub-zero, but is there anything you need to do to dissipate heat?
Downhole, no. Like I said, we just make sure that we don't put anything downhole that's above freezing. Mm-hmm. And there's not enough heat creation downhole. Mm-hmm. To generally the ice is cold enough that's not an issue. Okay. We do have to be very careful when we take the fluid out of the chip melter system, and we have various ways of cooling that fluid back down before we reintroduce it to the fluid circulation system. Okay. So if you have a drum of drilling fluid at 50 degrees Celsius, you'd never put that back into the system. You have to cool that down before you're able to use it. But basically we're just very, very careful to keep things as cold as possible, and it's it generally works.
So on a core run, where we're retrieving, do you pump then as well? Wouldn't that friction cause heat or an issue for you? No, it's fine. It's I mean, again, the ice sheet's really cold, so okay.
Yeah, it's our coring runs look exactly like what you would be used to, drilling with a regular minerals exploration rig at a mine site or something. We pump down the overshot or pump in the core barrel, drill the core, send down the overshot, retrieve the core. Looks exactly the same, except we're pulling up ice as opposed to rock until we get to the subglacial environment, and then we use the same tooling. Sometimes we even use the same bit. We've had pretty good luck with these PDC, button bits that core ice fairly well, and they work really well in the subglacial sediments. And we've even had luck running them for 5, 6, 8 meters in granite. And generally, that's about all we need. So that's another big difference between what you normally see in drilling, where you're drilling hundreds or thousands of meters of rock. The rock sample that these guys want is generally on the order of something less than 10 meters. They don't need any more rock than that. They need the upper sample is what's really important for their dating, and then they also want a bit more rock just to make sure that they're actually getting true bedrock. That we didn't just drill into a boulder or something. So the rock drilling part of the project goes really quite fast. Usually it takes about a day. Sometimes a single shift and you're done with the rock drilling part, but you'll spend weeks, getting to that point.
So my work with the military or, working throughout the country, drilling and safety is key and critical. And, as we had troops, the Red Horse deployed in Afghanistan or Iraq or whatnot, the stakes are much higher because sending a chopper or something from Bagram because somebody, broke a hammer union loose and it was under pressure or something. It's a big danger. And now I think you're remote. You're very remote. Obviously, safety is critical, but what does emergency response look like when you have all the same dangers on site, plus Mother Nature fighting against you, these extreme temperatures for fluids and whatnot?
Sure.
How do you guys work around that?
Well, no one's shooting at us, so that's nice. But we do have in Greenland, there's polar bear danger. So we take bear guards. There's a rifle in camp. You establish a watch for that because the polar bear threat is real. But the weather's the biggest threat for sure. So most of us have been doing this a long time. There's a whole group of professionals out there that are, professional science support people that know how to establish a safe camp, know what equipment needs to be on site, know how to deal with the comms and all that. So we work closely with them, both in Greenland and in Antarctica. So in Greenland, it's a country. There's a population there, so they have search and rescue capability. There are helicopters staged and fixed wing assets staged in various areas. There is one hospital in Greenland, but then there's also the U.S. military has a presence in Greenland. So this last season, we were supported out of the military base, so that would have been our evacuation point if anyone had gotten injured. We take our time. We number one is don't get hurt, because that not only is that dangerous for each person, but it means the project's likely not going to happen. So we go slow and careful. There's no money in this, so we're not trying to get to make a profit.
You don't charge per foot, huh?
Nope. The cost is already built in, and we just do what we can to get the project done successfully and without getting anybody injured. When we work in Antarctica, the U.S. Antarctic program is, again, quite a large group of professionals that there isn't a permanent population in Antarctica, but there's a variety of countries maintain bases down there, and so there's a search and rescue network all around the continent. Sometimes it can take a long time, either weather-wise or just aircraft-wise, before you can actually get someone evacuated or get medical care. So again, kind of the same deal. Slow and careful. Don't do anything dumb. We think stuff out well in advance before we actually do it.
Thank you for joining us for episode 77 of the Driller Newscast. Part two of our discussion with Tanner Kuhl and the United States ice drilling program will be next week. Check out thedriller.com. There is a ton of information on there. There's a lot going on in the news. We had this great interview and we took a break with the mental health and the suicide prevention discussions we're having. I thought it'd be great to talk to a driller that is drilling the unknown that we don't get to talk about a lot. Not a lot of times when somebody says, yeah, we got to watch out for polar bears. I want you to go out, be safe, check on your colleagues, your coworkers, your neighbor, anybody that seems funky. Let's find out if they're all right or not and get them the right help. Have a safe and productive week.